Thank you very much. I'm Jerome. I represent Somali Resilience Program, SomRep, which is a consortium of 8 NGOs, started in 2011 after the Somali famine, and the organizations are represented down there, and this consortium is housed within World Vision International. SAADAAL. So SAADAAL means predict. And this is an early warning system that was developed around 2021, 2022. And it was developed as a result of several observations in terms of how, I think the language has been the same throughout from yesterday, how do we act before the shock or before the hazard strikes? And great. So one of the key things that happens in Somalia is a cycle of shocks. So this has to do with the drought and rainfall, floods and river flow, market volatility, and all this affects the households that we work with. Somali Resilience Program is a resilience program, and therefore the aim is to build the resilience capacities from the different shocks and stresses. And all this now leads to several impacts, all the compounding risks. They lead to livelihood loss, at the same time resource competition, but also local tension and instability. And this matters a lot because all these risks are not operating in isolation. And sometimes small signals can quickly escalate into something big and obviously which leads to loss of livelihoods, displacement, and obviously tension within the communities. And in terms of information, this exists, but at the same time, how do we act on this information in a timely manner, and also how does it get to be trusted by the people that need to use that information to act? And this is where the SAADAAL system was developed. And it was a system that was developed together with the government, specifically in Somalia, it's the Southwest government. And the aim was to use the government, work with the communities that we work with from the resilience programming, and make sure that they are able to utilize the system. And in terms of how this was developed, so SAADAAL system, as I mentioned earlier, looks at the different shocks, stresses, the climatic shocks that we experience, the market volatility and everything. One of the key things that we did was to do a historical trend of all these indicators that the system will be tracking. And from those trends, determine the thresholds that should be used as triggers for action that needs to be taken. And in this case, how do we also get the communities involved? In the first development phase of the system, it was more focused on the climate, the science behind the climate, and it was more on the scientific side, but also the use of AI to make sure that it's able to process all this data and determine the thresholds, and also then what kind of action or preparedness needs to be taken by the communities. And one key thing that we had to do was to ensure that the isolated way in terms of information that was available on the different risks that exist and the different shocks. And the SAADAAL system comes to address that or to integrate that and process that as interrelated events. And this now, the system is able to translate this information into practical signals and analysis and decision support. And one of the key things that was there was to make sure that the SAADAAL system provides the necessary early warning information for the communities to work with. As highlighted earlier on, these are the different inputs were from, we had sources from FAO, SWALIM, FSNU, ECPAC, and also the weather stations that exist in different locations, but also the communities themselves reporting. One of the key things that we have to deal with, especially for the communities, was how do we get them to interact with the system? How do we deal with the barrier of literacy levels and everything? And that's where we had to introduce the SMS, but also the voice using the IVR, so that the communities are able to also, through the community structures, they're able to use the system, interact with the systems through the voice recording and everything. And the system, through that, from the science side, using AI, but also from the community feedback and providing of this different information, then the analysis that happens through the AI, then timely alerts are produced. These warnings are based, as I mentioned, from the historical data and the thresholds that exist that were determined. And the system is able to also highlight the analysis. One of the key things that I wanted to highlight about the system and the interaction that it had with the community is the fact that the communities had already existing indigenous knowledge of early warning, of what is about to happen based on the indigenous knowledge. And we had the science side of things, which the system now was used to develop. And this was one of the key things that we had to work with and interact with the communities and work with the communities to ensure the legitimacy and the trust in terms of the information that needs to be used. One of the key things that we noted was that helped to allow the communities to use the information as it comes. So I know that in the next session, that's where we're going to talk more about the trust and the use of the information. But one of the things that we had to make sure that we're sensitive about was the system working together with the authorities, but also the community members that are supposed to be the user of the information, to make sure that the information that gets to be disseminated is trusted and is also acted upon. But at the same time, how recognizing that there are different actors and different signals means different things to different actors, making sure that each and every actor and the stakeholder within the system, they are aware and they trust and they understand the information and what action they need to take. I remember one of the examples that I'll be able to show earlier on was on the flooding that was supposed to happen. But before I get there, this is just the value chain of the SAADAAL warning system that shows the different indicators that we track and the analysis that goes through as the data gets to be inputted into the system and the warnings that the system is able to generate to ensure alerts are sent and the action that the communities need to take and the different actors also need to make sure that they are aware of and then act accordingly. So these are the different users, as I mentioned earlier on. The communities are there through the community governance structures, early warning committees, to understand the information, the alerts, and translate them to the fellow community members, but also to feedback into the system based on their understanding and indigenous knowledge of the different warnings that exist for them to take necessary action. And that ensures the feedback loop and the interaction with the science behind the system. But also the local authorities that are the coordination unit that ensures that this is an impending shock and what actions that we need to take and what actors need to be involved. But at the same time, how do these warnings get to be now to inform decision support and the resources allocation by the different actors. And this is where the humanitarian actors come in now to ensure that there is that prioritization, but also rework or refine targeting and the scenario planning, but at the same time, positioning resources accordingly based on the needs as per the early warning. So this is just showing the involvement of the communities in terms of the local knowledge that exists around some of the early warnings that exist from the different shocks that they experience, but at the same time also how do they do the sense making of the science behind it and also the blend with the indigenous knowledge. This is an example that I was highlighting that the system was able to highlight and flag out an impending flooding that was coming for the river Shabelle, which obviously gets its waters from the Ethiopian highlands, and the rising levels obviously indicated an imminent flood. And this was now communicated by the government, the Ministry of Disaster and Humanitarian Affairs, with the different line ministries and actors, then coordinating the issuance of and the dissemination of the warning bulletins to communities and local authorities. And that helped to avert one of the almost every now and then a phenomenon where floods would obviously catch people unawares, and obviously there's a loss of livelihood, loss of life and assets. And this is how the system now was able to prevent that. This is just an example of what the system is able to generate as a report, and this is specifically for a rainfall indicator. And as you can see, it provides specific analysis of specific locations and what that entails based on the historical data and what actions need to be taken. So this is how the report ends, as you can see from the recommendations, the trend, and the drivers. and how then from this report, different actors sit down, and that helps to ensure that there is ease in terms of decision making, but also in terms of resource allocation, but also in terms of dissemination of that information through the community-based structures and the different actors allocating the necessary resources. I will discuss more in the next panel discussion on what are the bottlenecks that are existing there and how are we navigating such challenges or bottlenecks as part of implementing over time this system. Thank you.